Very simply, the short-term cause of the rise in prices in gas is the return to normal from the pandemic. So we are simply not ready for the vast increase in demand for energy that has come as a natural consequence, that we are switching factories on that have been switched off, that people are demanding more, they're travelling more, and we're heading towards winter, so there'll also be a pressure on the use of gas in terms of heating. The longer-term cause of it is the extremely poor decisions that have been made by successive governments in relation to energy policy. So we are simply not ready for what's happened with the pandemic, despite sitting on some of the largest natural gas reserves in the world. The fuel crisis is a little bit different. The fuel crisis is a more straightforward market panic. There is no shortage of fuel. The shortages are in the HGV drivers, and there the government's main responsibility is to restore confidence. But that's not the issue with gas. In gas, the issues are more fundamental and systemic.
And then you mention a few more of those gas problems during COVID and lockdown, maintenance of certain infrastructure, like our nuclear power stations, 3 are down, like our gas lines to France isn't there, like gas storage, which has shrunk. So there are many issues coming into play here on top of what you mentioned.
That's all true, and this is what's known as a security of supply crisis. So there, the goal of the government, fundamentally, where energy is concerned, is to ensure that the lights never go out and there's always enough gas to heat our homes. And here, where we've got a number of crises hitting simultaneously, layered on top of what is poor planning, then this is happening. This is where we are starting to see worries from the national grid that the capacity margin is going down to a dangerously low level where yet another error coming on top of the others could cause those problems to happen. So here, obviously, the headline issues are usually around residential consumers and fears about heating homes in the winter, particularly for the elderly. But the bigger crisis fundamentally is for businesses.
Why do you think it is that we're not tapping into the vast unexploited reserves that we have, like oil, like gas, like fracking? Why are we not using these resources?
Well, I mean, if we go back to the last 2 or 3 governments, there was a fairly sensible approach to the low carbon transition, which was saying ultimately where we're going is it's a renewable future. It's one with a lot of nuclear on the grid. It's one where if there are any fossil fuels, they're going to be carefully mitigated so that the carbon isn't causing problems to the climate. But this is a long way in the future. While we get there, we still need fossil fuels. In particular, we need gas. And that approach has been abandoned by this government for one that's much more focused on a more evangelical green agenda. Now, an analogy, it's almost like London 2012. So Boris is looking forward to COP26 at the end of this month, and he wants to wave a big Union Jack and say, look at us, we're leading the world on climate change, follow our model. Well, if you follow the British model, what you're going to end up doing is having a fuel crisis and a gas crisis, while sitting on these huge reserves. And the moratorium that was put in place on fracking in 2019 now looks like an extremely bad decision. It looks like one in which, where had that not had happened, we would now be seeing some of the gas coming from those fracking sites mitigating this crisis, particularly having left the EU, where we wouldn't then be forced to sell it on an open market in the region. So
we've been bullied by these kind of climate extremists. And to our detriment?
I don't think so. I mean, there's a lot of press attention on Insulate Britain and these other crazy groups that want to make a lot of noise but don't really have any ideas. I mean, they're emotional campaigns. They don't really have anything serious to say about climate change. They just want to let you know what their feelings are about how horrible this all is, and they're scared. Okay, but don't do that by blocking motorways.
But do you think the governments are listening to them, and that's why they've stopped tapping into our resources?
Oh, no, it's much worse than that. They're not listening to the extreme activists. They're listening to people who are coming to them with get-rich-quick schemes. This is a low-carbon industrial complex. So people are coming along with these great ideas like, I can solve all your problems with hydrogen, I can solve all your problems with carbon capture and storage. Just give me a guaranteed stream of income or a regulated asset base for the next 35 years, and all your problems will be solved. And that sounds great for a politician desperately looking around for a solution that they can wear a high-vis jacket and go on TV and say, we've done it, we've solved the problem. But this is exceptionally expensive. The public essentially gets shut out of these debates, as do the businesses that are consuming energy.
Andy, I did a poll. It was just on Twitter, but 20,000 people voted within a short space of time. And I said, put in order of priority, what do you think is the most important? And I gave these options: security of energy supply, affordability of energy supply, reliability of energy supply, and then cutting carbon emissions. And people's responses came in that they wanted security of energy supply, followed by affordability, followed by reliability, and then the green carbon cutting. Now, it wasn't that they were energy or climate deniers, they just put it in a prioritisation of what they needed. So yes, go on that green journey, but please be aware of cost and it being there for us and our businesses. Do you think this reflects broader public opinion?
Yes, and it has done for a very long time. I mean, that your Twitter poll is absolutely consistent with the national opinion polls, and the issue is that the priority appears to be reversed for the government and the opposition parties. So at the moment, Westminster is deeply out of sorts with the public on this, and it's not clear we're going to get any sort of intelligent change in that approach until after COP26 is out of the way and the flags have been taken down.
Can I bring another issue up, which I think is one which is really yet to play out in full, and this is the price cap. Now, we're seeing companies collapse because of the price cap, and although Kwasi Kwarteng said we will not support businesses with a failing business model. Now, I would say it wasn't a failing business model. They were told they had to cap their prices. So even if wholesale prices increased, they had been told to cap it. Therefore, it was imposed by government. It wasn't that they had a failing business model. So my question to you, if you can try and answer it, what are we to do? Will we remove the price cap? Will we keep it there? Who is going to pay the bills? But if we move the price cap, there is going to be a shuddering effect for everybody as well.
Okay, so you're both right, both you and Kwasi. The price cap is a crazy policy. The government cannot centrally plan the price of energy. These are global markets that are delivering the underlying costs, and simply changing the superficial price you see on your bills means that you just get shortages. You create queues, you create backlogs, you create lack of investment. So that policy does need to go, and prices do need to go up in response to what is a supply shortage. However, in Kwasi's favour, some of the companies that were involved in the retail supply were undercapitalised and not hedged, ready for this crisis. So they're going out of business, partly because of the cap, but also partly because they didn't hedge in the expectation that this kind of crisis could happen. And this is a fairly predictable crisis. In fact, some people were predicting it. So if we move away from that and look at what else could be done, yes, the price cap needs to go. You do need to address the affordability issues for particularly vulnerable consumers, but that's a welfare issue. It's a very bad idea to try and manage that issue by managing prices. You should be doing it by managing the welfare benefits, and the unfortunate optics of cancelling the £20 on universal credit at the same time that this cost of living crisis is happening is terrible. So that is a decision that perhaps needs to be reviewed, but it needs to be reviewed in light of how long we think this temporary price situation is going to persist. And at the moment, it does look like it could be at least half a year, if not longer.
So, irrelevant of the kind of those that are in real need, the welfare issue, is it going to get better for us, or have we got a really long-term look at this energy crisis continuing and prices just soaring all the time?
It's very unlikely we're going to solve this quickly because we've done nothing for the last 2 or 3 years. So fracking can come on stream in a year at best. Nuclear power, we can build more nuclear power stations. It will take 10 years. If we try and solve it with renewables, they're intermittent. You need the gas to back them up. So that doesn't really help. We've got some coal-fired power stations around, but the chances of those going on before COP26 is out of the way is zero. And after that, it's extremely contentious. And the argument would be, well, couldn't we do this better with gas? And then there's a whole host of other exciting technologies coming down the pipeline, which, to be very clear, will one day replace the fossil fuels. But they're not ready yet, and they're not going to be ready for some time. So we're not in a good position, and we've got to put up with this for some time.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.